think about invisibility. What is present, what is absent? And you will see it in every single artwork I make. Every time I meet people, their questions were absolutely ridiculous, a real stereotype.
To be proud of ourselves, of our culture, us being women.
So I wanted to recreate the safe space with women-only spaces. Tradition, in reality, that is good for a community and for a culture, evolves. You'd be shocked by the stuff that curators used to write alongside my work. And that was very, very important to me, to control that narrative. I didn't allow it to be shown.
Being strong does not mean that you lose your womanhood, you lose your femininity.
And I broke the records of sales for the art group ever. So I never changed the way I approach art and the language. I've always been local about my work. So you have to create a sustainable practice. You have to continue to make art.
Sustainability is doing good.
It's part of our core. You really have to invest in learning and being a student for life. I learned till today.
Every business today faces a choice: keep doing things the old way or take a smarter path forward. CES Consulting helps entities across Saudi Arabia make that shift. Our team of experts builds strategies that cut waste, control risk, and improve efficiency, all while protecting the environment. Whether you run a factory, a utility, or a government project, we make sustainability work in real numbers, not just words. CES Consulting, advancing responsibly.
Every creator has a story. Every brand has a message. Every event has a moment worth remembering. At Pod Media Network, we make sure the world sees it and hears it. From recording and live coverage to editing, we turn ideas into productions that move people and build brands. Wherever you are, across Saudi Arabia, your story starts here. Voices that connect, stories that inspire.
Today, we are honored to sit with Manal AlDowayan, one of Saudi Arabia's most celebrated contemporary artists, a storyteller of identity, memory, and women's voices, and a creative force whose work has resonated across the world. From monumental public installations to deeply human participatory art, Manal has challenged narratives, preserved collective memory, and opened global conversations about representation, belonging, and cultural evolution. Her journey reflects courage, curiosity, and a profound commitment to giving space to voices often unheard. But beyond the art lies something bigger: leadership. Manal leads through culture, through narrative, through influence, and through empowering people to see themselves differently and respect diversity. Her work shapes minds, inspires dialogue, and opens doors for the next generation of creatives, thinkers, and visionaries. In this episode, we're going to explore her beginnings, her artistic awakening, the role of art in shaping society, the responsibility of storyteller, and what it means to build legacy and cultural leadership in a rapidly transforming Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Manal, for joining us today. I know that you came straight from an installation of an art piece in the Red Sea Museum.
Yes.
So thank you for giving us the time.
Oh, thank you for your hospitality, Dina.
Ahlan wa sahlan fiki. Manal, I'm so excited because I know that you have so many extraordinary stories. And a journey that has been absolutely breathtaking. So before we even get into that, tell us, who is Manal AlDowayan, the person?
That's a very difficult, evolving situation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say in a basic sense, I'm a woman. I'm an artist. I belong to a world that is both local and global. I love being around culture, history, and the curiosity of that kind of world. I also love storytelling, and it's something that I've inherited from my grandmother, mother, and family. I also enjoy being around large groups of people and having amazing conversations about things that matter in life. But if you want to boil it down to a very simple thing, I'm just a woman living in this world.
You're living in the world and you're paving paths, Manal, mashallah alayki. So you said something about inheritance from your mother and your grandmother. Take us to your childhood. What was that like?
I was born in Bahrain, the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, in 1973. I was born in a compound, a world that exists within a larger world, which is a compound that was built to host American oil men and women. And it was created to make a Western worker feel comfortable. And the Saudi families that moved into this compound, we were one of the first, as part of a vision from King Faisal to incorporate Saudis in more executive and managerial roles. And my father was one of this generation that was pushed and put into this compound.
So I was Aramco.
Saudi Aramco, which is the national oil company. So I was born and raised in that compound with a completely split life. So I went to local English schools inside the compound. I played baseball. I was a Girl Scout. I spoke English, and really lived a very surreal Americana lifestyle. And then as soon as I would exit the gates of this compound, I would enter Saudi Arabia, my home, my country. When I go to my grandmother's house, this is where the traditions existed. We eat in a different way. We speak in a different way. We dress in a different way. And that is my existence in my childhood. Yeah, that's the beginnings.
Do you feel that it was like a real pure Saudi childhood? Actually, no, it was like as if you were living abroad in a way, right? You had the
For me, Dina, it was what it was.
It was the norm, right?
It's my childhood. And this is how I remember it. The good thing is that I had many Saudi families and children that had the same experience as mine. So I didn't feel alone and it didn't feel weird. And we existed as a larger community. We had our own culture, our own accent, so we speak to each other about our own experiences. So there was a good community that was identical to my experience. So there was it didn't feel lonely, but it also felt very worldly. It was global because eventually other families, it was not just Americans, there were Latin Americans, there were Africans, there were Asians from Far East to Near East that would be living in the compound. So it was very, very global upbringing.
So you're the eldest child?
Yes, I am. Big sister, yes.
You're the big sister.
Big sister energy.
Big sister energy. How did that play a role in your childhood and the feeling of responsibility? Did it actually play a role in any way? Did you feel it as a child?
Maybe now, when I reflect, I say yes, 100%. I did have big sisters always are the experiment of their parents. They were I think in a poetic way, I was the main intention. I was the first. I was the plan is to have children. I was a successful plan, therefore they had others. If the plan of the first failed, I think I would have been an only child. No offense to only children.
Me.
But yes, I wasn't. Big sister energy was very important to me. Now, looking back at my upbringing, it gave me a space to express care. It gave me a space to feel like a leader within my family. And I still feel it. I still feel the sense. And my parents treated me, it gave me this sort of responsibilities and focused on me being the first. It was, I was a first girl, and my brother came after two sisters. And so really, I was always the boss of the family. And I love that role. I cherish it. And now it's more honorary. Now I really abuse it because تعالوا سلموا على خالتكم الكبيرة or أنا عمتكم كيف that kind of stuff. But I think it shapes you, your positioning in a family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you were growing up, you had all this different sports, you were doing different activities. Was art at any point in your childhood a passion or a hobby or something that you were driven to?
Yeah, this is a question I get asked a lot in my career because people love this poetic story that I started drawing when I was 3 years old or singing when I was 2. But really, no, I did not. I really had a normal childhood, alhamdulillah, happy one, a very balanced one, in my opinion, right? So people might look at my child and think, oh my God, that was a challenging place to grow up in. But really, I had a wonderful childhood. I think now at this age, I reflect on things that might have influenced me. So my uncle, my mother's brother, owned the largest art store in the Eastern Province. It still exists. It's called Al Zamil Stores. And I know that in my childhood, every weekend we would go and walk around in those, the aisles of the store and pick up a pen, pick up a crayon, look at this clay thing. And my uncle himself, the owner of the store, there are 2 uncles, Abdulaziz and Faisal Zamil, and they encouraged this. They would let us take things for free, had long conversations with me about art. And this is something just now I'm realizing it must have influenced me because I felt comfortable.
Right.
It was a curious place. It was always discovering something new. It never got boring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't think of becoming an artist until later in my life. I knew that I loved creativity. So when I grew up, in my teens, maybe late teens, let's say 18, 19, like that, I'd loved going to museums and I would be the only one among my siblings, like, let's go, guys, and drag them through the museums. I loved that. But that was the extent of my interaction with art at that point.
Okay, so you finished school and then you went to study university. Tell us about that journey.
So my schooling was both English and my parents absolutely wanted me to learn Arabic. So I went to government schools from first grade till the last. So I've studied good Arabic schools and I also studied in the afternoons in English schools. So I was a dual language from childhood. When it came time to go to university, it was a question of what do I study? And I really wanted to study art. That was the first thing. And I don't know why, but I just thought, that's something that calls to me. وقتها, my father was like, what are you going to do with it? يعني بتضيعي فلوسي, because there were no scholarships for women back then. And for you to study abroad, your parents will have to pay for it. So أبوي قال لي ما تدرسين فن, شو بتسوي? What are you going to do with this degree? I looked around me really, and I couldn't see there was no ecosystem for artists. There was no museums, no galleries, nothing in the Eastern Province. And I think most of Saudi, there was a little bit of activity in Bahrain, but it was far from me. And so I thought, what could be a practical degree? I was like, how about fashion design? I'll sew dresses. That's a craft, you can make things. And my father was like, no. He said, the future is computers, and that's what you're going to study. And for me, I was like, where am I going to study? قال لي, you can go to America. And for me, that was enough. I just wanted to go and explore and have a passion for just going off and being on my own. And so I went off to Boston. I studied there computer science.
Okay.
I graduated with my bachelor's in computer science and then returned home immediately and started working in Aramco. As a computer scientist, as a programmer.
So wait a minute. Before you come back, you had 4 years in Boston. What was life like there? How was you being a young Saudi female girl at the time, young girl, studying in the States? What was the perspective of, the people around you? Did you have any challenges there, or was it normal? You didn't feel any challenges, any perceptions that made you feel uncomfortable?
The usual challenges, Dina. And when you go to college, it's the first time to leave the bubble of safety of your family. There's a bit of homesickness, but I really loved living on my own, having my own bills. I was always broke at the end of the month. My mother would have to send me money secretly and eating cornflakes at the end of the month because I didn't have enough money to buy food. But, because I spent all my money on shoes or something stupid.
Right.
University for me was amazing. I loved studying. I love academia. I even enjoyed computer science. I loved it. And even though it wasn't my choice to do it, it was a very interesting, challenging, this idea of formulating words that sort of trigger actions and cyclical actions and problem solving. I really loved it and I enjoyed it. I also met a lot of students from everywhere in the world. That was so much fun. I met Ecuadorians, Mexicans, Haitians, very few Americans, surprisingly. I think the biggest challenge for me in Boston was the cold. Right. It was snowing, like super, super cold. That was very hard to survive, but I was young and I can handle it. I don't think I can handle it at this age. Yeah, and I graduated on the dean's list. So I was very, very happy. I love university. I always say, I wish I could be a career student.
Yeah, mashallah.
Manal AlDowayan, I loved studying.
So were there any other extracurriculum things that you were doing?
Definitely we were exploring America, taking road trips, hiking, skiing. College days are very, very interesting moment in somebody's life because it's where you're trying to define who you are and you experiment with everything. And like, oh, maybe I'm a skier. No, I'm not. I almost broke my legs doing skiing. Let's try out hiking. Let's go and visit this area. Let's go. And I did go to museums. And there's the Isabella Gardner Museum in Boston was my safe haven when I was living there. I used to go there all the time. I have even a favorite artwork from this museum that just really I just adore. And so I created a relationship with something there. But Boston was about 150 schools, I think, within that state. So you can imagine it was a student town full of people my same age. It was just an energy, fun exchange. You learn that there's a world beyond your world. And that was a moment where you sort of open your eyes and think, I need to stick to this. I want to be part of this, meeting people with different cultures. The way they eat is different. The way they pray is different. The way they, interact male to female is different. That was very fun for me.
So you found it intriguing, actually, the diversity of the people. That's exactly what triggered you, right? It's interesting that at this point you still did not know that your path was art. You were studying computer science and it was, all about that and academia. But yet you found yourself, your safe haven was in the museum.
Yes.
Did you ever think about this?
All the time.
What was it that attracted you to it? Was it what? Tell me.
It's very detailed, Dina, but Isabel Gardner was a collector, American collector, and she would travel the world and bring objects. When she passed away, she put in her will that her house is not changed. You don't move nothing. And the way she put it is the way it stays as a display. There's no labels. And so you walk in, it's as if you're in a house,
right?
But it's full of beautiful objects. A garden also. She had a garden. All the plants were also collected from around the world. And this idea of objects, beautiful objects and preservation, and then thinking about legacy, all of that was very, very interesting to me. Yeah, and there's also a Netflix drama about 2 works that were stolen from Isabella Gardner Museum. I enjoyed watching because I used to go to the museum and the frame was there with no artwork. And they have a note saying, there was an artwork by Van Gogh or a Rembrandt.
Right.
And so it is a place that I started to understand what it means to collect, to appreciate, and not necessarily make it so unaccessible.
Mm-hmm.
She left it the way she wanted it to be, the way she set it up, like a home. And to walk through that home and enjoy, the architecture, how she laid out, why she put that cup next to that bowl, next to that whatever object.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I love how that resonated with you.
Yeah.
Because I feel that throughout your journey, it's somehow it's reflected. You absorbed the concept of the creativity being accessible, being very emotional, and it has meaning and it has a diversity and all of that. So you came back to Saudi.
Yes.
Then what?
Well, my father had brought my employment papers to my graduation in Boston. Yani, there was no moment of Allah yarhamu. He really believed in the importance of us getting an excellent education and being financially independent. That was very, very important to him. He actually had a wall where he had all our degrees. That was his office, and had all of our degrees hanging on that wall. And he'd point at that wall and say, "That's my investment in life." So for him, us working and becoming successful and independent, not needing anyone, that was his dream. And 100%, no break, nothing. Here's your employment papers, you're working immediately. Back then, only 3% of women were working in jobs. The opportunities were very limited across Saudi Arabia. But in Aramco, the opportunities were much more broader, but still 3% is nothing. And so I applied for a job and I was hired as a computer programmer. And I worked in Aramco for 10 years. My first boss was a woman. My second boss was a woman. And then eventually it changed. I became a boss.
Nice.
But inside Aramco, there was a school of another type, like an education that I gained. After 2 years of working in Aramco, I got a scholarship to do my master's degree with the Shevening program, which is a British Council program. And I went off to do a master's degree in London in systems analysis and design. So I have a master's in still computing. So I really loved it. I enjoyed it. I'm very comfortable around technology. But that was the beginning of sort of thinking about art. And I was really already passionate. Every moment I had in the first 2 years when I was an employee, I had money. That was the first thing. So I can pay for holidays, and I would travel to see specific museums around the world. That was my program was like, which museum this year we're going to have to hit this city and see this museum. Then we move on, and there's a public artwork here that I need to see. And so it became sort of a thing that I did every. Yeah, it was my passion. Exactly. And so by the time I came to London to do my master's, I had already bought a camera. I've been fiddling around with a camera for a while. Even in college, my undergraduate came back with maybe 5 boxes of, because there was no digital photographers, film, 5 boxes of photographs. It was just personal photographs. But in London, I decided to start doing evening courses in art schools, Central St. Martin's, Slade, Royal College of Art, that kind of stuff. And I would take short courses here and there, or maybe like longer ones that are about a few weeks long. And my mom used to send me money secretly because, scholarship money was not that much. So my mom would send envelopes of money, and I'd pay for these courses. And I took a year-long course in darkroom printing with a master printer called Sol Abajo, Spanish. And that was my first time to think about my photography with a conceptual back. So it's not documentary photography. Really, she challenged us with different projects, and I started to dabble in conceptual ideas. And I photographed my friends and my sisters. That was my first project. I don't have it in my website, or it's not in the collection or anything like that, but it was my first experiment. And because of that, when I returned after my master's degree, I joined the Saudi Aramco art group. And this is a group that has existed since the 1950s. There's a lot of articles written about it in Saudi Aramco magazine, but it's a group that exists for people to express themselves, even though they work in an oil company.
Right.
And there were hundreds of members. It was fascinating to see a surgeon that is a painter, person that puts together equipment for digging for oil wells. He carves wood.
Right.
And it really opened my, my idea of what creativity could do to a community. And it was the beginnings of understanding there's a tribe that I can belong to. And I led the photography department there.
You led the photography.
Yes.
Actually, Aramco opened opportunities, right? Yani they had this diversity, and they were, I think this was their social responsibility towards their community, right?
Yeah.
And so you started photography. This was the beginning of your spark into the art, right? But then you said that it wasn't just photography. You weren't taking pictures of your sisters and friends as portraits, right? You
No.
started bringing in concepts. What was the first concept that you came up with? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. It was called Look Beyond the Veil. And it was because, and then I made a collection out of it. So I have a collection like that, but that was the experiment, the beginnings of it. And it was a very early time. I think it was a response to being a Saudi woman that travels the world. And every time I meet people, their questions were absolutely ridiculous. The way they sort of speak to me like, oh, you speak English so well. Like, where did you learn it? I'm like, school. There was really, really an ignorance and also a stereotype. And it was sometimes a real stereotype. And so I really felt that I feel there was a veil, a barrier between the human and the idea of that person. And that was the first concept that I wanted to do.
That's the collection that has the lady with the oil helmet, right? Engineer helmet.
That was called I Am. That was different. That was
a different one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look Beyond the Veil had much more simplistic imagery of different objects and traditional elements and women just posing. There's a pointing to the future, also another collection. I Am was a very important. That was the first time that I think this was the real work. And then came The Choice, which was a work about women needing specific things. Like, choices in this world are so important, and we didn't have many choices. But I Am was a response to a moment in Saudi history where I think King Abdullah gave a speech in the Majlis al-Shura where he mentioned women will build the country alongside men. يعني paraphrasing, ما أتذكر الكلمات بالضبط. وأتذكر it was so exciting يعني إنه we were mentioned, we were seen by our king, and there's optimism and يعني jobs. And then there was opinion leaders ومجلات والجرايد كتبت إن يعني they're not going to work in everything. Don't worry. They'll work only in jobs that suit their nature as women. وأتذكر I read that and I was like, oh, what suits? يعني it was such a philosophical, it wasn't a theory. I don't know where it came from. Because in reality, I was surrounded by women already working in very, very interesting careers. And so I invited these women to pose for these photographs. So there was an engineer, there's a doctor, there was a scuba diver, there was a filmmaker, architect, and so on and so forth. So there's so many careers. And I abstracted these pictures with traditional jewelry, very antique jewelry, because my neighbor has a home museum and she collects these objects, and I borrowed them from her. And the idea was that, a Sa'at tradition can be an obstacle to change if you really stick with it. Tradition in reality that is good for a community and for a culture evolves with its people. But once it's used to block and stop progress and stop evolution, that's when it becomes problematic. And that I placed it in weird ways, like an engineer with a heavy coin veil, an architect with, heavy bracelets hanging off of her arms.
Yeah, and subhanAllah, they always say when you look at art, we're told to, I'm not an artist, right? Neither can I consider myself an art critique, but I am drawn to art and I love art, most kinds, let's say. To me, seeing those pictures at the time, the way I saw it was this culture, even if it's a Bedouin culture, even if it's, they're still capable of doing.
Mm.
You know, this is the way I read it. I saw the heavy veil, as you said, that she had the engineer helmet on. So, and she could be this oil engineer yet with that. It was a very positive that we saw it that way. But Manal, I think at the time it was very controversial. So this was very courageous of you because it was not yet acceptable to have such kind of controversial opinions. It was, where are you going with this, Manal? Worried about you, we don't want you to get in trouble or this kind of artwork. Were you faced with any kind of resistance?
And it's shocking that I have never been censored. I've never been kicked out of and I've never had drama. And my pictures, the first set that I ever made, was shown in Riyadh as part of a show called Common Ground. And it was inaugurated by our foreign minister, Saud al-Faisal, Allah yarhamu, and the foreign minister of the UK, Jack Straw. And it went all over the press and nothing. It was fine. And then after that, every project I have worked on, there was a moment where my family or my sister or my friends would say, oh, this one is a wild one, Manal. I should be careful. And then the next day, I'm surprised that all the newspapers across the country, conservative newspapers and liberal ones, would publish my images. I'm not sure what kind of reasoning comes behind this kind of treatment that I've received, but I do think that I was very much speaking a language through my art that connected with a lot of people, not a few. And my favorite and best audience was always women. They would attend my exhibitions and they would absolutely react. يعني كده, reaction with an emotion, with excitement. And I think they supported me in this journey. Journalists across the country really saw something in my work. This is me reflecting now at this age. I didn't see it. I didn't think of it that way back then. I was just like, oh, look, alhamdulillah, الشرق الأوسط حطت صورة أعمالي. ما أدري إيش مجلة القافلة طبعت لي عمل, But I think it was journalists really wanted my work to be seen. I think the audiences loved it and the reaction was very positive. So I never really had any seriously negative reactions.
So if we take a step back, because this wasn't your domain, you were working in Aramco and you started this as a side hobby, right? So how did you start your first collection actually? How did that come about? And how did you start marketing this? And how did this happen?
I wasn't treating it as a hobby. Really, I'm quite obsessive about things. So it became an obsession.
Okay.
Ever since I bought my camera, I became my whole world revolved around, I want to do something with this. I wanted to express.
Okay.
I wanted to say something. And I'm not a good writer. I'm not يا ريت أعرف how to play a musical instrument. This is my biggest fantasy. But I was a failure in all my music lessons. Really, it was a form of expression, maybe because I was a woman living in Saudi in a time where there was not much space for my voice, and I needed to have, I needed to say something, a youthful energy that wanted to do that. But eventually, when I came back from my first master's degree, what really helped me was that in Aramco, there was a dark room that was magnificent, because I've already gone to art schools and seen the dark rooms in art schools. There are nothing compared to this dark room because it was used by the geologist, pre-digital photography. So it was high-tech dark room, huge, so many enlargers, chemicals, the notes, shelves, everything. And nobody was using it except me. And so during that time, there wasn't much things that you could do. There was no cinema. So I used to spend all day, all night in the darkroom. I'd go to my work from 7 a.m., finish at 4 or 5, and then from my job into the darkroom, not go home for food, nothing. And I print all night, wash the darkroom because you have to clean it and then go back and so on and so forth. So I was just really obsessed and printing constantly and formulating ideas, sketching my ideas, writing statements that accompany the artworks. And eventually I printed these photographs and did a community show inside Aramco.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, how am I going to present these works?
Yeah.
I knew they were controversial, but I don't know. I was not like, I was not thinking controversial. I was thinking this is my expression. This needs to be said. And so the art group had a gallery. طبعا when I say gallery, معناتها it's a portable with the next portable next door is karate lessons.
Yeah.
And this was, it had nice hardwood floor and it had painted white walls and good lighting. So I framed my photographs. I decided to price them and I didn't know how much do you sell an artwork. So back then I had another sister friend, Dina Amin, who is now our CEO of Visual Arts Commission in Saudi Arabia. But she was working in an auction house in New York called Christie's. She had just graduated from MIT, mashallah, and joined them. And I called her up and like, Dina, come, how much? And she was like, have you shown before? No. You have a gallery representative? No, nothing. She was like, okay, a starting price that is acceptable is $600. Okay, I can, $600? ممتاز. حسيتها غالي. I priced the big works $600 and the ones smaller a little cheaper. And I made my own poster. I swept the floor. I created كده sales sheet, an Excel sheet for prices. So يعني لما ينباع شيء نطق عليه كده. Got stickers عشان نحطها. وسوينا الافتتاح كده. I will do the opening in Ramadan. And ليش Ramadan people يبغون يطلعون يبغون يلبسون يعني كده. تخيل أسوي في رمضان. That's a good time to يعني أجمع الناس ويطلعون طلعة. And I broke the records of sales for the art group ever in their history. يعني اللي يشتغلوا معي لأن volunteers من the art group helped me man the cash register. And they were shocked by the sales. And who bought my works is my community.
Right.
Community of women, mostly. But my community, there were men also who bought my works. And الحضور كان كلهم من أصحابي وأهلي, people who work with me. And I understood the value of speaking the language of who's around you. Because later on in my career, people came up to me and said, okay, خلاص كفاية this local stuff. If you want to be a global artist, you have to speak in global themes.
Okay.
And I never understood what that meant. I think it was an attempt to tell me يعني كفاية talking about women.
Right.
I feel like that was the sort of the push. This kind of language came from international curators and ناس مو مستوعبة إيش قاعد يصير and why I'm doing this. So I never changed the way I approach art and the language. I've always been local about my work.
So was there a specific moment that defined your art loving or love of art and the wanting to have a voice, okay, and turn it into a purpose? Because later on, all your artworks have a very distinctive purpose, which we're going to get into. But what was the tipping point? When did this shift actually happen?
Many shifts, Tina. The first shift was just calling myself an artist.
Yeah.
كنت أستحي أقول أنت إيش أنت فنانة يعني كذا تعرف. I dodged it and I just felt ماني بعرفة when do I call myself فنانة? I always felt like there were gatekeepers to this. يعني
Right.
once I get the approval of the museum, once I get approval of this curator, this gallerist, يمكن بعدها أقدر أقول إني فنانة. But before that, I just really, I was very, very ashamed to say it. I was showing already in galleries. I had exhibitions across the Khalij. I had one show in London back then. And I had a gallery representing me in Dubai. يعني كان عندي كل المؤهلات. I still didn't feel I deserved it. Maybe I just didn't understand how to get on with it. And I think maybe it was me working in Aramco. So I had already a job title that I was a creative director at the end of my career. So I didn't stay as a computer scientist. I worked in creative work شوية في Aramco before I left. I think I needed to leave. And then خلاص, what's your job? Artist. غير لما you have a job. But now I know that you can be an artist whenever you declare it yourself. خلاص.
Right.
So the first time I called myself an artist was at the Delfina Foundation, which is a residency that I got offered because I was having a show for Bahrain. Bahrain was a very, very important part of my career because there was a really active art community, galleries, artists, ناس تحضر, ناس تقتني, they had museums. So I used to show in Bahrain. And this old Spanish woman with her director, Aaron Cesar, is an American, came to my show. They bought a couple of my works and I said, we want to offer you an artist residency. وش residency? And like, and you come live عندنا in London for 3 months and you are an artist. I was like, and we pay you. You pay me? Give me money? Yes, they were giving back then £1,000. And that's the salary of a young new hire engineer in Aramco. I was like, what? That's crazy. Okay, I'll do it. ورحت وصلت كده typical Aramco.
At this point استقلتي ولا لسه؟
لا لسه.
Okay.
حتى that was a big challenge to leave. Aramco wouldn't allow me to go. Oh, my boss said no. And يعني it sort of recalled the time when I was not allowed to study. يعني في بداية أحس إن enough is enough. I need to take control of what I want and what I'm passionate about. حتى قدمت استقالتي.
Okay.
وما قبلها. رفعها وقال نعطيكي إجازة من غير معاش. And I just left. I packed my bag and left. يعني ما استنيت إنه يستقبل منها. Because I thought this was it. This is إذا ما سويت الحركة الحين it's going to slip away. I went to London. Spent 3 months there. I arrived at the residency with like a list of goals and objectives and achieve ومسكتني دلفينة وقالت لا حبيبتي, you are here as an artist. You don't, they didn't even give me a studio. You don't make art. You go and absorb the art scene. You visit artists. Whatever you need, we will make you comfortable. But you're here to really understand the London art scene. كان مو طبيعي. This
interesting way of maybe molding artists that they no expectation.
She doesn't mold. That's the interesting part. She doesn't collect art. She says, I collect artists. I don't collect art. That was Allah yarhamha توفت هي. And there were only 2 artists at a time. Now the Delfina Foundation hosts like 40 artists a year. That's huge. And it's a very prestigious residency. And it's a very important. المهم في هذيك الفترة I made a collection called Landscapes of the Mind and another collection called The Hand Claps and Hand Waves. And both works really reference, if you look deep into them, you'll see it was my struggle of thinking about leaving home. Really pursuing my true passion and what will I lose when I do this, and the questions I ask about the landscape. And in Landscapes of Mind, does the landscape belong to me or do I belong to it? I made those works and went back to Saudi.
Wait a minute, I'm curious. What did you feel? Nihaya, was it who belongs to who? Did you reach to a resolution?
Most of my artworks pose a question and not give an answer. It's very difficult to find answers, and you change the answer as you change your perspective. I think maybe at that point I was very, very confused. ما كنت أبغى أترك my community, ما كنت أبغى أترك بيتي. I really loved living في الشرقية وبين صحباتي. I had very healthy, like, it was not like I was an abused artist or حزينة, but I felt that if I wanted to pursue my passion, I have to move into this world. شر لابد منه تعرفي. And I was sad about, saying goodbye to that life, but also I had deep excitement about what's coming next. What an adventure. And I quit my job after I returned from the Delfina Foundation by 3 months, packed a couple of suitcases, and I had no home. يعني عندي بيت أهلي بس طلعت صرت أسوي residencies around the world. سويت إقامة فنية في القاهرة, سويت في أمريكا, سويت في different places, and في دبي بعد. And Dubai caught my attention. I have a gallery that represents me in Dubai. It was called Quadro Gallery. It was run by بشار الشروقي, عائلة بحرينية, with ولدهم هم الماسك الجاليري. I was like, يعني الواحد يروح يسكن جنب الجاليري حقه أحسن. And so I opened a studio in Dubai in 2013. That was a beginning of a life-changing experience لأن الإمارات احتضنتني. كان already عندهم فوق 70 gallery، كان عندهم بيانالي، عندهم art fair، كان في حركة فنية قوية قوية قوية، نعم عالمية بس فيها عربية. sorry.
It's fine.
So it was يعني كان في a lot of artists from the Arab world. That was fascinating. And not just Arab world, Iran also, Pakistan, Uzbekistan. يعني بديت كده أحس إنه something can really happen. And I made my first solo show, sold out. Second solo show, sold out.
ما شاء الله.
كان كده في دعم. طبعا السعوديين were there, but also الإماراتيين والحكومة الإماراتية كانت دعمتني، يعني عاملتني كأني بنتهم. فيعني وزير الثقافة كان وزيرة الثقافة كانت مهتمة فيني. كان في الشيخة لطيفة المكتوم كان عندها مركز فنون، كانت يعني تدعمني بشكل مو طبيعي. And eventually she helped pay for my second master's degree. فلقيت كده another kind of community that is much more
close to home though.
Yes.
Yeah, very close to home.
بالضبط.
Yeah, subhanAllah. You had these residencies all around. Manal, how is it that it did not affect you in any way to shift your art into this globalization? You know, you weren't sucked into the globalization. You stuck throughout all these times and all the experiences and everywhere you've been. You stuck to the culture. You stuck to the origin. You stuck to, and you were narrating your story and your people's story throughout. Was this on purpose, or it was just something that...
my art is really a narrative of me only, not my people, no one else, just me. And the experiences of residencies and meeting people and having happy moments and sad moments, هذا كله يظهر, but it shows in my art. It's a narration of different things that I've experienced, what is important to me in that moment. And traveling the world is important to an artist because you start to understand yourself better, you understand your humanity more. And so this was very influential in my art too. And وإحنا العالمية, I don't understand what it means, but 100% I did understand how the art world works. ما كنت جالسة جاهلة في بيتي, like thinking, and coming up with weird prices and thinking, why isn't anybody recognizing? No, I went out and found out, what does it mean to be an artist that is a legend? I went and did a residency in one of my favorite artists' homes, Robert Rauschenberg. Artist has passed away, but he's still remembered. He's exhibited all around the world. How? Why? What kept him going? What kept his legacy going? I learned, and I was just a sponge absorbing. I met artists, sculptors, singers, theater actors. All of this is embedded in my body now. And it comes when it's needed. I lean on it and I understand it. And I understand language that, a body would need to do performance art. I understand. So these things are important. It doesn't mean that my art needs to replicate or mirror something that I've seen. Because in the end, when I make an artwork, the artwork is me. And if I'm a global person, then my art is going to look like global. I don't know.
No, but that's exactly it. You are a global person in sense that you've been out there, you've lived all around.
Also, Dina, I'm a very emotional person.
Yes. And what I'm trying to get to, that your emotion and your attachment and, your love of your culture.
I'm very sensitive. I love hate my culture, let's say. في أشياء كانت تجرح من ناحية قضية المرأة, من ناحية دخول مساحات ذكورية, like being in patriarchal spaces was very, very hard. Having a boss that tells you مو على كيفك, and I'll fire you if you go pursue your passion. Or, there are things that really can't, and he couldn't see this young, passionate woman. So for me, my work is more emotional, and whatever I'm feeling at that moment will come through my art.
What was the toughest moment you had in your artistic journey?
In my artistic
One that it was, you thought it was going to be the end of the world. خلاص. Finish.
I'm quite a positive person, Dina. This is, هذه مشكلتي. Really, it's sometimes a problematic. What is a moment? End of the world. Yeah, I can't even.
A situation that was very difficult. You had this idea you wanted to do. You weren't allowed to do it for whatever. You ended up doing it.
Yeah, that's the problem. I did. خلاص. And then when I want to do something, so I'll tell you a story.
This is it. You ended up doing it, but it wasn't all paved in roses, Manal. So, for sure, there were a lot of struggles, a lot of difficulties, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of crying, a lot of, which one could you remember that was like, oh my God, yeah, that I remember it. But now you laugh about it because you overcame it.
I have an artwork called Suspended Together. في العربي اسمه في الهوا سوا. It was an artwork that I made for an exhibition called Terminal in Dubai. And it was curated by Bashar Shrougi, my gallerist. And it was under the Edge of Arabia program. And it was, artists were asked to respond to the airport experience. And so it had about 15, 16 artists in it. And I decided to look at the idea of the permission slip that women needed to travel. So back then, women in Saudi Arabia, in order to travel, would have to have a male guardian give them permission to travel. Sign a paper, and then you put that paper slip into your passport. If you don't have it, no movement. And I invited many women to contribute their documents, and I collected about 100 of these documents and placed them. And they're documents from award-winning scientists, engineers, philosophers, writers, the brilliant women that I had in the world. And some I didn't even know, just sent it to me. Academics, وكذا. And I printed those documents on the bodies of these white doves and hung them as an installation, 200 pieces. And, it was sort of the star of the show in the sense that it was the program that went with the exhibition had a big dove printed on every single page. And the sponsors, and this is the first time we had sponsors. Usually we used to gather our money ومدري ايش نسوي fundraising, كل واحد يحط a little bit of money and نفتح الشو. هذا المرة قلنا we're gonna get sponsorship. One of the sponsors didn't like this work because they felt it was controversial. And they came and asked me to remove the writing on the doves.
Oh.
وأنا كثير صدمة كانت لأن up until that point nobody's ever said anything about my works. And for someone to come in who's not even from the art world, is just a business sponsor, and ask me to change my work. And thankfully, my gallerist, the curator, the people, the artists, all were stood by me. Like, ما عليكي منهم, And I just felt obliged. I didn't have the courage. And I told them, okay, fine. I'll remove the writing digitally, الكتالوج, but the work stands as it is. And they accepted. I cried that night a lot because I thought I did compromise. I should have fought harder. And I just didn't want to, I just wanted the show to open. And what was funny, Adina, the next week after this show, Saudi Arabian Airlines has a magazine called أهلا وسهلا.
Right.
وقتها ملايين يقرونها. تنحط في الطيارة كمجلة طيارة. And they ran a 4-page article about this work. Zero censorship. ولا أحد اهتم إنه مطبوع عليها. And they put the concept وكله. So it was bizarre that these people asked me to remove this work. And طبعا because of their gesture, I got very paranoid about showing this work في السعودية. And anyway, the original artwork was put into auction, and it was acquired in Sotheby's by a museum in Qatar, and where it's shown now permanent. I decided to create another series of them as a limited edition porcelain. ما اقتنوا منها البريتش Museum, اقتنوا منها many museums around the world الصراحة. It exists. But the fun fact is this year, the Ministry of Culture bought the doves from auction. And last year, I had an exhibition at MISC Art Institute. It was a solo show, sort of a small retrospective. And they requested the doves. And I was like, are you sure? And like, ايوه هذا مرة مهم بتاريخ الفن السعودي. I was like, what an incredible full circle for this artwork that, I lost faith in showing it. And, it made me question a lot of things. But here it is. It belongs as part of a narrative of my society, of my history, of my country. And I love that it's been embraced that way.
You said in the beginning that I think the most people that supported you indirectly were the journalists, right?
Yeah.
And the journalism that were publicizing the things that you were doing. I guess somehow journalism and art, because they understand creativity somehow. But business people maybe, did not have that understanding of art. Their focus was just, they're into their business and fear overcomes.
I have no idea.
Versus,
because we had sponsors that were very courageous. ما تعرف. I don't understand people who censor. It's very interesting. It was actually 2 British guys that represented the company. Yeah, so it was somebody that comes from a culture that values freedom of speech, oppressing my speech. It was very bizarre.
Yeah, interesting.
It's a case study that somebody needs to يقلب فيه, and you'll never understand, or actually you'll understand a lot about how important art is within society, what colonization does to art, and how narratives of society and history change or document or get erased through art.
We're going to get to that, but I still want to tap on this one. Yani, this was a very, very sensitive topic in Saudi, and all of us as females, yani, it was an agony. Okay, it was horrible that we needed to have this permit, and we were the lucky ones. Were the ones that had their fathers or husbands that would give this permit for travel, open-ended with the passport. But a lot of women did not have that, and it was as you said, an unfair status at the time. When you created this art, you were voicing it. How did the Western world take it? How did they interpret this? Was there did they say, "Oh my God, this is how you guys are living, and this is what you do," or was it what was the reaction?
So I'm very sensitive about how my work is shown and written about outside of the Arab world. So when this work, I was very aware of the narrative that Western institutions wanted to place on artists like me. Obviously, the first big challenge is that, yes, you're artists, but you're not really artists. You're just an Arab artist, or you're a woman artist from the Middle East. يحطونك بcategory that is so small and so restricted and so token that you are not part of this global art history that exists for our artists. And I was very, very sensitive to that. And so when I show my work, I used to be a crazy woman in the sense, I don't like using the word crazy, but I used to be very, very strict about what is written alongside my work when it's shown in your museums. And you'd be shocked by the stuff that curators used to write alongside my work, and using it as a tool to reconfirm their narratives towards what women in this side of the world, or Muslim world, or Arab world, or just brown in general, what we are. And that was very, very important to me, to control that narrative. And so I didn't allow it to be shown, except with my full, the text needs to be my text. The artwork needs to be placed in the right space, not alongside weaker spaces like artifacts or شيء زي كذا. Yeah, I controlled that a lot, and I continue to do this. I recently, last year, was invited to do a performance at the Guggenheim Museum in the Rotunda in New York, and they wanted me to do a participatory work because my work, I have a very big line of art that allows the community to participate, usually women, but I've expanded it to full communities. يعني في العلا, I've worked with the whole city of العلا, رجال ونساء وأطفال وكذا. But they wanted me to do some kind of participatory work. And I was very, very self-conscious of, I'm not going to self-orientalize myself in New York. I will not do it. And as much as we do have problems, we're not perfect. Women have a long way to go. American women too have a long way to go with their situation regarding their bodies, regarding their rights, regarding whatever it is, salaries and pay. So I agreed with the museum that we will produce a work, but I will use your archive to create this artwork. And I went through their library. I found the right articles, the right stories, the right books. صراحة, Guggenheim was quite good. They were very self-aware, so not all their books were damning. So what I did is I'm going to go out to the newsstands that surround the museum just to look at magazines, like teen magazines. What do they say to teen girls and women's magazines? And then also my phone, suddenly the algorithm changed. So the Instagram started sending me weird, like, make your face tighter. How can you, shrink your belly? It became sort of an obsession with my body because my phone was there in that place in New York. And in the end, I created an artwork that addresses women's situation around the world, including America. And this is something that I try to always be conscious of wherever I go in the world, that I do not tokenize my experience. I do not self-orientalize, and also be very aware of the global situation. So women are not okay anywhere in the world.
Very true.
And it's very ignorant to, and then as an artist, you really cannot fall into this feeding, this insatiable need to give us something oriental, give us a veil, Manal, give us a dangerous moment in your life. I'm like, I don't want that. No, this is not what, and what benefit will this bring? It will not open minds. It will not connect people. It will not elevate us as humans and people.
Absolutely. So that's a beautiful segue actually to the participatory work that you started. What triggered that? Because you ended up doing a lot of artworks then that engage the community and mainly women. What was the trigger? What was the first one?
Yeah, the first one that I thought was the first one was Ismi, Perbies. But now when I look back, I think even my photography, the first early photographs that I did was participatory. I called my sisters, my friends, and they posed for me. And so, yeah, I review my artworks constantly. But let's say the first real physical participatory with a large community was Ismi. I think the reason I started doing participatory work, there are two reasons. Number one is cultural, and the other one was safety. So the first cultural one is because I grew up in women-only spaces. Like my grandmother's house or my cousin's house. You go in and there's multi-generations, البنات الخالة وبنات العمة وأولادهم. And in that space, you feel safe. Your voice can be as loud as you like. Nobody tells you what صوتك or, cover up or make yourself smaller. No, you can be yourself. You have a space to be you. I love that. So I wanted to recreate the safe space with women-only spaces. Number two, I always found that there is safety in multiple voices. So I could talk about a subject that's really scary, to face, the society with it. But once you have 100 women saying it too,
yeah.
It's I can It's like I can equate it to إذا أحد قال لك Dina, I want you to sing on stage in front of 10,000 people. Or I tell you, join 100 women and sing.
Yeah.
It's so much more easier. And you feel so much joy doing that versus the trauma and the fear of doing it alone. So that was the two things.
Manal, you made it so fun. I participated in most of your artworks. I mean, the ones that I could when we were here. You made it joyful. You gave it meaning. Yeah, and it was you gave it so much meaning. You explained it, and it was about the legacy. It was about the legacy. I'm in love with your artwork. I mean, besides the fact that I will now admit you are my childhood friend, and okay, but honestly, I respect the work that you do. It's because there's so much depth into it. There's so much meaning. There's so much. You made every single person, okay, with the different backgrounds. I attended a lot of them, right? I have a similar background as you. We all were exposed from childhood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of these women weren't, right? A lot of them were not exposed, pure, traditional backgrounds with not much exposure. But we all had the same feeling. You managed to give everyone that same feeling of pride. To be proud of ourselves, to be proud of our origins, to be proud of our culture, to be proud of us being women, to be proud of who we are, each one individually, who we are as a collective, community. It's not easy to hit so many stones, so many birds with one stone, But mashallah alayki, you managed to do that. And I feel that it was so genuine. You're going to tell me this, you're going to explain it, but I don't think that you didn't make it feel like it was something that was,
No, absolutely.
And yeah, it was very genuine.
It was instinctive.
Yeah. And it showed. And that genuinity shined, it shined through you, that light that just went across everyone. Everybody was doing the art, whether it was Ismi, the name, whether it was the Tree of Guardians, which was the Tree of Mother, right? It's all about the mother tree because it was always the fathers. And so there were so many beautiful things that you've touched in people. How did that make you feel?
Well,
did you ever stop to think, or it was just...
Oh, I think about it all the time. And because there's so many opportunities. Everybody now is like, oh, let's do a participatory work. I can't do it. It has to be really emotionally connected to my being, and it needs to come from my heart, from my soul. Here's the thing. My practice throughout my whole career for the past 20, 25 years, I have a question that I pose to myself. And I wonder and I think about ideas about invisibility. What is visible? What is invisible? What is present? What is absent? And the politics and the social structures around these ideas. And you will see it in every single artwork I make, if you think deeply. And I feel the reason that these participatory workshops were so successful, and I cannot do them over and over because it needs to be the special moment, is that as humans, we want to be seen. It starts off from, cavemen when they put a print of their, they leave a trace on the wall. They put their hand, they put dye and print it onto the wall. And it goes on to people who graffiti. If you go to Al-Ula, you see all the rock art. Actually, مو بس بالعلا, all across Saudi. Humans want to leave their trace. They want to be seen. And when you come up to a group of women at a moment in history where we were not allowed in public spaces, our image was forbidden. Our faces were considered not خط أحمر in many spaces. It is when I bring these projects to them, and then they feel seen. And I feel seen through their experience. And it continues. And now I've done this again in Al-Ula with the community because Al-Ula is fast transforming into a beautiful, beautiful. I love Al-Ula, archaeological.
Oh my God, it's
discovery.
one of the most beautiful places in the world.
I agree. And it's been turned into a UNESCO heritage site. But we have to also understand the protection of UNESCO also encompasses its people. يعني thank God. لأن it didn't have that before. And I feel that I think the people of Al-Ula are being dwarfed next to the monuments, dwarfed next to the history that their place represents. But in reality, we have to remember they are the ancestors. They're the continuation of those people that drew and made and built. And so I work with them, and they also love to be seen. It is life-changing for them to participate in some of my artworks.
This is something that I know is dear to your heart, but it's dear to my heart as well. إذا نسيتك فلا تنساني.
Yes.
Besides the fact that it's a beautiful art collection, but this was mainly about your father. And it was when your father passed away. Tell us about it.
Well, thankfully, I have art to lean on for very, very difficult life moments. Because you asked me earlier a question as well, was the most difficult moment in your life? That's the first thing I thought of. But you said in art, and then we took the conversation somewhere else. But in life, losing a family member, especially a parent, is very, very. It shakes your world. It transforms you. It makes you also, as a young person, face mortality and the idea of death. Because up until then, it was life is good, you know. So my father passed away in 2010, and it shook me. It shook my household, my family, and I leaned on my art. And I actually made almost 3 projects, not just this one, really addressing this ideas of memory and forgetting. And because he had dementia at the end of his life, Alzheimer's. And so, it still remains under the umbrella of my question of what becomes invisible. And I became invisible in his memory. I disappeared slowly. And that really,
painful.
Very painful. And I needed to deal with it. I understood the human condition. I understood that we as humans are defined really with our memories. Without memories, who are you? You're just a vessel. You're skin and bones and muscle. But really, a human is defined by what they remember, with their experiences. And I started making different projects, really reading a lot. Most of my art is months and months and months, sometimes years of research. I love reading. I love looking at academic papers. I love investigating what other people have done, as in poetry, musicians, other art forms. How do they address this idea of loss and loss of memory? And so I ended up making this collection, إذا نسيتك فلا تنساني, which will be shown permanently, alhamdulillah, in the Black Gold Museum in Riyadh, a national institution in my own country, because before that it was acquired by other museums outside in the world. But I think starting this year, it will be open to the public to see at any time. This project, إذا نسيتك فلا تنساني، أول ما كان عنه I never named it that way. كنت مسميتها شيء ثاني. وأنا في الدارك روم قاعدة أطبع على الصور. One of the pictures, which is part of the collection, is a room of a former Aramco employee, retired, and he had a prayer on the wall. And the prayer says, Ya Rab, إذا نسيتك فلا تنساني. And I remember once I put it in the enlarger, because from negative ما تشوفين شيء. أول ما كبرتها طلعت لي الكلمات. It's like, oh my God, كلمت my gallery, and I'm like, change the title. And they're like, oh, we printed the postcards. Like, print them again. I found the title. فحسيت إن هذا العنوان العمل هذا is basically a collection of portraits, but not the traditional portrait. So I would not take a picture of people. I remembered that once my father passed away, objects that he touched or owned, like a mug, a pen, a book, anything, these things carried so much value for me and for my siblings. يعني أغلى من الذهب كان عندنا. And I started thinking about what does an object carry in its value to. أنت تعرفي هذا الجيل، جيل أبوي وجيل أبوك يا دينا، are people who didn't have a lot. يعني ما كان عندهم هذا اللي شري وعبي البيت. كانت أشياء عندهم معدودة، الأشياء اللي يحبونها. And I started thinking about his generation of oil men and women and what they collected. طبعا the reason I went to his peers is because my father never told me his story. He started to lose his memory as I became an adult, and I didn't have the time to ask the right questions. Like, إيش سويت لما كنت صغير? Who gave you hugs? إيش, how did you feel when you arrived بالشرقية لما شفت أول أمريكي? All these little things. And I knew in my heart that رجال ونساء الأرامكو were all their experiences are replication of my father's. يعني زي almost the same. كلهم جو من different parts of Saudi وساعات من العالم العربي. And they migrated themselves to the eastern province with a promise of a dream. And the dream was oil. And, I dealt with the idea of oil because, if you're in the West, oil damaging the climate. But for me, living within this community, oil changed our lives.
Of course.
And how their dreams came true through these jobs and how they raised their children and how they had an outlook to the world that was very, very different. فطلبت منهم I will do a portrait of each person, but through their objects. And I did a video interview. And you'll see it soon, the full collection in Riyadh.
MashaAllah. Do you feel that your father would be very proud of you for sure? يعني بس when you're able to leave a legacy like this with his pictures and his story and the stories of his peers, قد إيش هذا إحساس حلو بالنسبة لك يعني؟ I feel it's very touching. I can relate. Why I'm saying this, Manal, is because I can relate. My father also, he passed away 2013. And at the time, I threw myself into that Guinness record, which was an artwork. But he was gone. But the feeling that I had was that I'm doing this for you. This is, that I hope you'll be proud of me. And I want you to be proud of me. And I want you to, to be remembered or to remember, and الإحساس هذا, these little gadgets that you're talking about, I have a display of what is a memory of my father, the camera that he used to take pictures of me as a child. And, and this is الكنز, as you said. فأحس إنه it's the most touching maybe. And to me, such things are the most touching maybe than anything else. Having it in an art gallery here in Saudi at home, where you the rest of your family, the extended family, can see and can visit, and يعني قد إيش هذا is part of the legacy that you're leaving.
I think most of my artworks are sort of a record of a time. يعني اتركي عنك والدي, of course this was a way to honor him and remember him and sort of show that there was he was there. طبعا there's other people that I would love to include. It's very difficult to think about creating an artwork about someone because they've passed away. So I try to remove that from it, because then I can't even approach my mother because she's still alive and healthy. It's very difficult. I am creating a work for her called Mada'ad Ummi, which is coming soon. But so I try to separate myself from this idea of creating an artifact that commemorates a passing of someone. In the end, I am creating an archive. I always say an artist fits in loosely between the historian اللي يكتبون الكتب كده and they put it in the shelf وهذا التاريخ المضبوط وبين الناريتيف الصحفي مثلا اللي هو contemporary documents politics and history. الفنان كده يجي بالنص. It documents an essence of a moment in history. And I hope that this collection, and I know that this community of رجال ونساء اللي هاجروا, يعني they moved to the eastern province and created a new life and dreamed for their country and for their children, إيش كان قبلهم هذا كل معظمهم في watch their videos كانوا ما قال لي كان يرعى غنم في الصحراء صار CEO في أرامكو اللي كان في فلسطين وقاعد يقطف الزيتون وما أدري الحين صار أولاده are the most يعني the engineers في البلد وكذا يعني it is just incredible the human story and they are part of our narrative as a nation, as a country, as humans on this planet. And we exist. And an artist is there to sort of feel with them and capture this feeling and put it in some kind of archive, which is artwork. And if we are lucky enough to have these artworks acquired by museums that are our national museums and they preserve them يعني الميوزيوم شغلتها إنها تحافظ على العمل and they will preserve this for the next 100 years. That means it's going to be beyond my story, beyond us, our contemporary. It will be for another generation to look back. And that means we do have a narrative that is preserved, protected with the right story, not a story that's told by an observer or an outsider. Yeah, it's a very bizarre cycle to think of legacy.
It's not just a cycle, but you're actually implementing this. وما شاء الله عليك يعني you created. Now, you started off, you gave us all the beginnings and how you started, etc. But where are you today? Today you have a studio manager, you have a whole team, and you're creating an archive. And so tell us the importance about this, because I think this is how you're going to preserve this legacy, right? How does that happen? And what should an artist or let's say somebody that's striving to become, an artist or something with meaning and depth, like what you're doing. Yani, what should they do? What have you done, and what should they do?
First of all, you have to do everything in the beginning. ما يصير تصيرين رئيسة قبل ما تصيرين موظفة تعرفي. So my first education was a job, in Aramco. I learned how to manage a budget. I learned how to present. I learned how to deal with very difficult personalities and very lovely people. So, you really have to invest in learning and being a student for life. I learned till today. There are things I don't know how to do. And I look it up in the internet. So learning is a lifelong journey. Number 2, developing a team only happens naturally. That means you have enough work. عايزة تصفي لك ناس in your studio بس عشان. And my studio has always been in my home, very humble room. Inside my home, I don't like to rent out big spaces or أمشي الناس فيها. I find my studios, and I don't think it's right or wrong. Each artist follows their real instinct. So I find my studio is a sacred space. It has a lot of energy and feeling, and I cannot have all sorts of people coming in and moving it around or putting their energy there. So I really have run a tight ship. And as soon as my project started to expand and I found myself doing a lot of 80% admin work and 20% art, that was wrong. That's a very unbalanced approach, given that creativity needs space. And so I started thinking, he's going to handle my emails. I need somebody. I started thinking of bringing in one person. And then after this one person came in, I was like, I need her to have enough time to be by my side. And I don't want her to be dealing with shipments. And so I hired somebody to handle logistics. Then after that, so movement of the artworks and making sure my artworks are protected. They go to an exhibition, they come back from that exhibition, it doesn't get lost. Then I found her, my studio manager, started managing our travel details. I was like, no. Your job is not to book rooms and hotels. Okay, I need you thinking creatively at the high level with me. So we hired somebody to handle that. So it happened organically, depending on need. Then there's the other side of that is that we started as a team of women to really think about legacy. And why? Because we have found through our experiences, meeting curators, going to exhibitions, doing our own research for different projects, that a lot of Arab art does not have an archive. Yes, some exist in books here and there, بس ما كان عندنا تدوين مضبوط, as if the art started yesterday. No, it's not true. And the reason that we don't have that is because our artists didn't keep an archive. They did not preserve not only their artwork. The artwork is not what I'm talking about as archive. I'm talking about their research, the articles written about them, the books they read, the objects they collected, the rocks that they loved. هالأشياء. As we travel the world, me and my studio manager and other artists too, we notice that museums now are collecting artist studios, the archive of the studio, not just the artwork.
Oh, wow.
Because when they do an exhibition of an artwork of an artist that has passed away, the audience is very curious and they want to see vitrine.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It actually makes
You want to see the articles that were written in 1950. Actually, أول واحدة عملت كذا كانت قبل صفية بن زكر. الله يرحمها. When you go to her atelier in Jeddah, the first thing you see is her artworks on the wall. In the middle is the archive. She understood. She also had a library. And she also had a school. She understood, transferring legacy, what it meant. I love that. And I learn a lot from my elders, and I learn a lot from personal experience by attending exhibitions around the world. And now, as an artist and as a studio, we run an internship that happens every summer. We bring in a group of young students from anywhere in the world. They can apply, and we put a theme. And always the theme is around the archive, but really we specify it. It could be the written word 1 year. It could be, the visual archive. كذا. ونشتغل on my objects and my collection to really catalog and organize and write about. And so this legacy is an ongoing project. I always tell everyone that we're constantly, as artists, facing our death. Because really the price of artworks goes up once you pass away because the supply has ended.
Oh my goodness.
You look at the archive. Oh yes, this was the first time I ever had this experience. Was my gallerist printed the year I was born on the postcard in an art fair in Abu Dhabi. And his mother, also owner of the gallery, told him, حرام عليك وشو تفضح البنت وتحط عمرها وكذا. And he's like, people are not paying high enough prices because they think Manal is too young. يستحافظ على وجهي ذيك الأيام. فكانوا يعتبروني young artist. It's not لا تراهي كبيرة بتموت قريب يعني pay more. So really we are constantly as artists facing this, and I don't mind. I think
it's not changing. Is it not changing now? No, this is still a thing, right?
No, and it's a beautiful thing because if you understand, if you recognize death and mortality, you appreciate life so much more.
You appreciate life. That's what I mean. I mean, appreciate while the artist is alive. Why is it that after the artist dies, so many artists actually flourished after their artworks flourished after they died? I never understood this concept.
Different reasons. It's either because history ignored them. This is in Western art history, not in ours. Western art history, women were ignored from art history, and now they're rediscovering them. They're indigenous artists مثلا بدوا يكتشفون. يعني فنان عمره 90 سنة, he's been making art his whole life, living in a منطقة كده نائية. And then a curator discovers. I mean, it's because it's the moment that people are trying to recognize. Now we have a different approach here. But in reality, إذا الفنان is still alive, it means they're going to make more and more artworks. Once they pass away, خلاص, that's it. What exists in this world is the supply. There are artists like Picasso who made 30,000 artworks in his lifetime. That's a market on its own.
Yeah.
Andy Warhol also made thousands of artworks. That's why you see them all around. Their legacy exists because there's an archive.
Yeah.
There are some artists that were brilliant, but they only made 4 artworks in their whole life.
So there are 2 things I'm getting from what you're saying now. One is creating a lot of art. So consistency. Good art, obviously. Consistency. Secondly, archiving.
Yes. So you have to create a sustainable practice. The consistency هذه. I call it sustainable practice. إيش معناته sustainable practice? You have to continue to make art. And how do you make art? By making a system within your studio a mixture. Your rent is paid, you have exhibitions, and you can buy materials to make more art. If one of these things falters, ممكن توقفي. You can't work anymore. And then all is lost.
Interesting you say that, you use that word. So I know that you have taken in consideration in some of your artworks the sustainability and the environmental aspects. So actually sustainability, the economic aspect, the social aspect, and the environmental aspect. And you talked about now the economic aspect of it, right? Is making sure that there's a financial sustainability for this continuity to happen. But then there's the social aspect, which also is very clear in a lot of your artworks, because you know how you're including, you know, the community, and you talked about this a lot. Then there's the environmental aspect, okay, that you have also focused on in some of your projects, which completes the cycle of the sustainability. Tell us something about that. It's beautiful to see, and I believe that this is an important message that also you are giving to other artists, and you're giving to the community, that even when you're doing art and whatever you're doing is very important to think of your natural resources, to preserve it, to make sure, you know, that it's environmentally a positive impact, or at least not leaving a negative impact.
Well, I'll be truthful with you. I did not work in this. I didn't, and I was aware.
Okay.
I was aware of, environmental conversations. I was aware of, global warming and thinking about sustainable thinking in living and in our planet. But it didn't appear in my art. I think this is a subject that came later when I was maybe in my 40s, late 40s, and that's natural. As you age, you start to think about the next generation, and then that's when you start worrying. I'm like, am I leaving a planet that is livable for my nieces and nephews? And then, of course, my first interaction with this was when I went to Al-Ula for the first time. I was commissioned to do an artwork, and I started to think about there was a thriving kingdom, Nabatayin, and they absolutely disappeared. Their tombs stand in a desert. مغطى بتراب. What happened here? And this is where I started making my first artwork. Now you see me, now you don't. And now I'm developing a new artwork. But really, I started talking to my team in my studio. And okay, how do we become a sustainable studio? How do we bring this kind of thinking? So we started talking about care, first of all. Now we care for each other, care for our space, care for the places we go to, care to how we engage our work with the outside world. We do not exhibit in places that do not align with our beliefs. We do not like places that are not kind to humans, not kind to the planet. And so I'm trying hard to do that in an emotional and sort of political way. But also then we started thinking about projects. You know, I do big, huge projects. How do we make them more sustainable? And so we have a very big project in Al-Ula, in Wadi Al-Fan. It's a huge valley that has commissioned 5 artists to do land art projects. And land art has a deep history, thinking about how to preserve our planet. Also, I read a lot of ecofeminism and how women were really the core of many ideas that come around care for Earth. And so we started with this project and I proposed it to the Royal Commission of Al-Ula that I would like to bring in an environmental consultant onto my project, and we are going to track everything we do for this project, whether we fail or succeed, but it's tracked. Transparency is part of the journey. And so
sustainability.
Yep. And so we started with a standard that is very low, that if we don't do nothing, get on million planes, build our project with not sustainable materials, and that's the lowest. And here at the highest is if we can achieve this. And then we are hoping that for my project, Oasis of Stories, which is a land art project built in a valley in Al-Ula, we are working with an architect from Dubai, Wa'il Awar. He won the Golden Lion in the Architectural Biennale in Venice for his ideas around using a new type of cement that instead of using lime to cure it, it's to use waste from desalination. And Saudi Arabia is number 2 desalinator in the world. And the brine that comes out of this desalination can be used. It can be mined. There's magnesium in it, like a type of deep salt that can bind cement particles. And actually, it's carbon negative. And so, and I use that word in truth. Yani it absorbs carbon rather than emits it. And a wall like that has never been built. There's a lot of sciences. We're not the first. It's actually because when new science appears, you see it happening. It pops up all over the world as an idea, and different people have done different experiments. We are one of these people, and we are trying to think about how to build this artwork in a sustainable way. I believe that artists are and architects like Wa'il. We get a moment where we can play with crazy ideas. But you never know this idea. If we build this artwork with this new material using a sustainable source, which is the waste from desalination, maybe in the future, we are going to be building our homes this way.
Absolutely.
And we will find a new material to develop. And so we dream, and artists are dreamers. We are a bit wild and experimental. And in the end, we are also very important to society and its development. And, I conclude maybe this conversation, Madri. I conclude this idea that a society that embraces their artists and cultural makers and creatives really is a society that has a very, very good path ahead of them.
Wallah, Manal, I think, I have a request was first, because what you said is dreams and ideas, but it's happening, and I think you have the power of storytelling. And with art, there's the power also of storytelling. So this is where you're blending also the legacy. And it's a legacy also of doing good. Sustainability is doing good. It's also in our religion, huh? يعني it's part of يعني عمارة الأرض. It's part of المحافظة على الأرض. It's part of our core, as a religion, as people, as humans. It's a global direction. So when you storytell about your art, that you make sure this part is very clearly told and the reasons behind it, Hadi, I think, will have that ripple effect like so many other works that you're doing that has a ripple effect. So I urge you to make sure that this part is very much highlighted,
It is. Transparency is part of sustainability. So we are building a website. We are documenting everything. We even have a speaking program about it, inshallah, when the work is finished.
MashaAllah alayki, Allah yadik al-afiyah. So, Manal, what's next? For Manal, not for your art. What's next for Manal? I mean, art is mashallah alayki. You came now from your installation. You're traveling tomorrow. After tomorrow, you're going back to Ula for another work. No, but it's Manal. Is Manal today content with what she has done? Or is it like, hello, this is just the beginning?
It is just the beginning, Dina. I learned this early on in my career. When I did the residency at the Rauschenberg Foundation in Florida, I was the youngest artist among 12. And there was one artist that was younger than me, Kim Fowler. She was a sculptor. But all the other artists were older than me, and they were mostly women, 10 women. And they were all in their 60s and 70s, and they were doing the best work of their life. And I learned in that residency, and I tell you, this is why an artist needs to explore the world. You learn so much about yourself, about humanity, about your journey, that at that point, I thought it was the best, that I was already exhibiting, selling. But really, I knew that my later years will be the deepest works that I will make. And so I am still in my early 50s, and I think there's a lot coming from me. I'm not done with my storytelling. I'm not done with my archive is still being built. And I do love, this is my passion. With the most truth I can say is that art is my passion. It is my life. and I will continue to make it as long as I'm alive.
Allah يطول عمرك inshallah, and we are looking forward to a lot of more art. So how does that play a role? How does your family life, how does your husband and your siblings and your nephews, and how does that play a role in Manal's life? Because it seems like you're 24/7, into the art, but you have
Listen, having a human connection with, and not just family, even friends. I have friendships, deep, long friendships like yours, Dina, childhood friendships. These are elements that support women big time. And, having a partner in life is also beautiful, and having that respect and exchange. And family is connecting to family. And actually, the biggest thing that I made a big review of my life during the pandemic, because I was quarantining in London for 2 years. I was separated from all of these things that I've just mentioned. And really, I made a list of things that I will make sure that I will work to make them part of my life in a cement way, like 100%. So my deep old friendships, my family, and my partner, and my art. These are the pillars of my life, and they are what keep me happy, keep me inspired, and give me joy. But really, Adina, and I'm not exaggerating, art is the core of my life and my life's work.
It's who you are. It's who you are.
Yeah.
It's who you are, and you're doing it with passion, with love, and it's showing in absolutely everything you're doing. And I think the last thing before we end this is the pride that I see when you're doing it. It's besides the passion, there's the pride today that you're doing here in Saudi.
Yes.
You've done a lot of artwork internationally. But coming home, being here in Saudi, doing all of this amazing artwork in Saudi, and having the whole world come to Saudi. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for being open. And to everyone listening, I hope that this episode is a good reminder that leadership requires creativity. It also keeping your identity is also very important. Let's please continue having meaning and shaping the world with passion. And until next time, keep advancing responsibly.